Hi, I'm Janelle, and you're listening to The Moment It Clicked. Join me as I dive into the minds of fellow multilinguals to uncover the myth of the click. Is it real? Do others experience it too? Let's find out. Today I'm here with Iida, one of my closest friends. We met way back on exchange in Mexico, and we are still friends today. Something really fascinating about Iida is the work that she does. She works with a traditional healing method, which is traditionally passed on from in families in Finland. So we are going to find out perhaps a little bit more about this later on, but I am so excited to have her with us. So welcome, Iida.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Iida, so you're Finnish. When I came to visit you in Finland, I realized that there was actually a second language in Finland, which is Swedish. But that's actually not the second language that we're going to be talking about. Which languages do you speak?
So the two languages after my mother tongue Finnish that I feel most comfortable using are English and Spanish. I started learning English when I was in second grade, so around 8 years old. And then Spanish, I started with Spanish a little bit when I was 12, but I got fully into it when in upper secondary school, so around when I was 16 years old.
Okay. I wanted to ask you if you think it's possible to be the same person in two or more languages.
This question was something I was really like pondering. What does it mean to be a same person? Maybe do I get my message through in English same way as in Finnish, or do I get my message through in Spanish? I think it has required a lot of time. Also a lot of getting to know myself first. How do I express myself in Finnish in first place? And then maybe trying to get my message, myself, my personal identity through English. Yeah.
It's so pivotal to understand ourselves. I think the more that I talk to the different guests, the more that this kind of question comes up about, well, yes, what does it mean to actually be yourself? I mean, who am I as a question, and then sort of
Exactly.
say, well, what is it that I want to express, or yeah, how do I express myself in my first language? Do I like who that is? Is that the version of me that's the one I want to express? And then am I able to sort of portray that in a different language?
Exactly. And this is a very interesting point, because as a Finnish speaker and going abroad, traveling, and firstly mainly using English back then when I started, it's been around 13 years ago that I started traveling by myself. So maybe English for me felt like, maybe I go back, as I now think about it, I go back to school with English. Like, you have to learn English because it's your work language. It's your, like, it's only 6 million people speaking Finnish in the world. So if you want to travel, you have to know some languages. So we're not privileged in that, like as you English speakers, you are. But it comes back to the identity, I think. Like, me speaking English, it has involved a lot of moments where I feel very insecure, not knowing the context, the cultural, like the vastness of the cultural context where you merge into. You don't know everything. So you feel very isolated, and to become comfortable with that requires a lot of work.
Yeah.
You get the point.
Yeah, meaning that if I were to learn Finnish, just the language, and then go to Finland and say, okay, well, I know the language, but if I like, how do I reach a level of comfort in Finland, not understanding the culture? Like there, it takes time to understand why people do certain things, how they greet each other in certain ways, or even just spend time together. What does that look like? And for example, I remember the first time I spent a Christmas overseas. I was in America, but I spent a Christmas with some Peruvian friends, a Peruvian family, and we ate like tamales and traditional Peruvian food and danced in the evening. Like everybody got up and the whole family started dancing salsa, and I thought that was like incredible. And I was so shocked that that was sort of not shocked. Okay, that's a bit extreme. I was pleasantly surprised that a family could get up after eating like this immense amount of food and start dancing salsa. And I thought, wow, I mean, this doesn't happen in Australia. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so imagine going to Finland and saying like, okay, well, I just say I can speak the language, but if I don't understand the culture, how do I sort of express myself in that environment when there
Yeah.
could be some kind of clashes between the
Yeah.
cultures?
Yeah. 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 And yeah, I mean, in Christmas Eve in Finland, it's a quiet party compared to. I got the chance to spend one Christmas also in a Mexican family. It was so different, and and to be able to cope with it, like the language, the Mexican way of speaking Spanish, yeah, and the habits. It's so different, and to be a same person. Um, yeah, it's you can bring your own habits, but then yeah, you want to eat rice porridge, and they are like, what is that? And you try to explain, well, this is something super delicious and super traditional from my country. It's it's a mix, and it's a very interesting one.
Yeah. What else would you say about how you feel when you speak? Well, if you feel like yourself in two or more languages.
I would maybe go back to the early memories again. Or I think it's something very interesting because, you know, my early memories with English would include in Finland, we don't dub movies, we subtitle them. So I've always heard different accents in English, and it's been great for learning. But also the fact that you study English, it's obligatory, and you cannot survive without it. It's there kind of like a pre-assumption. Um, but I think I've always had the willingness to learn English. So the attitude has been very positive. Um, Whereas when I think my attitudes with Spanish, I can I feel more free. And speaking Spanish for me relates to having fun, chatting with friends, you know, making jokes, you know, being creative, because somehow it's something that I choose to study. So it's a lot of freedom for
Yeah.
me. Yeah. You know, when I first my first touch with Spanish was when a Cuban entered to my family, and she got married to my uncle, and I was around 11 years old back then. And I admired her since then. She's still in the family. I still admire her. And I remember thinking when I first saw her, I was like, wow, like such a like bright person with this, openness. And me with my family from Lapland, cold, very, isolated, very like culturally different to a sunny, bright Cuba. It's 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 of course I got this like impression like, wow, if all the Spanish speakers are like that, I want to be like that.
Yeah. I think I also had the influence. I actually was a film that I watched that was like Dirty Dancing, I think the second Dirty Dancing, and it's based in Havana in Cuba. And they dance salsa, of course, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool. Like I think Cuba has a lot to answer for.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
And do you think that there's this moment where, either in Spanish or in English, this sort of moment of a click where you feel like I don't know, you become yourself in all of those languages, like you don't necessarily notice a change. It's just something happens where you say, okay, yeah, I've clicked. It's clicked.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I first heard about this click, the idea of the click that you have presented, for me, I started to think about it as a moment where I felt understood fully by the other. I don't know if I understood correctly that you in this case would mean that me as a Finnish speaker, Spanish speaker, and English speaker would be as one.
I think it is related. I mean, yes, because if I think about my experience and how I think there were sort of several experiences where I felt like, oh my God, I've done it. Like I am expressing myself, like I'm expressing myself, who I am, and I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just being me. And and the other person seemed to relate to me as myself, like as who I am. So I think, yeah, that's sort of my experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, you have spent way more time in Spanish speaking countries that I have, but I remember one moment, and it's this from this spring because I was spending more time, like months in Spain. I would refer it as a click moment because I felt like communicating with another person. I kind of felt the same wavelength with the person, because I remember thinking, okay, my vocabulary is good enough to express myself emotionally fluently in Spanish, so that the other person could understand, and I felt understood, and this person could reply on a way that where I got the affirmation kind of that,
Yeah.
okay, this person really understood me. So yeah, I can recall this kind of a moment.
Wow. Wow. It's so it's so powerful. It's so I think sometimes that we don't spend enough time like thinking about this sort of achievement, because for me it's an achievement. It was, this sort of life goal which I've spoken about in other episodes, but where I really,
Mm.
I wanted to be able to be me in Spanish. Like I wanted to be able to speak Spanish fluently. And we can like talk about the definition of fluency and what that really means, and
Of course, it's never perfect. But I
yeah.
think we back in 8 years ago when we were in Mexico together, I think we can remember the various moments of frustration because we both tried to express ourselves in Spanish, and then the result was many times not what we wanted, right?
A confused face on the
On the other side of the communicative. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely. It's so I think it's really powerful and I really love your answer. I think it's I can almost feel it. I can almost feel that, that moment for you. So wow. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um so let's talk about creativity, as in the definition of creative. What does it mean to be creative?
What comes to my mind is not having any blocks, like not feeling any blocks on the body.
Okay.
Yeah, it feels like the energy is just flowing. Like I'm maybe if I even speak, I don't have anything on my throat area that blocks me, that
Mm,
prevents me from saying anything.
mm,
Um, Creativity also means like somehow a negative mental noise would be shut down.
mm.
So yeah, those are the first things that come to my mind, or yeah.
I love it. You've really touched on something new, perhaps. I think every response is so interesting. So I'm like, wow, we could talk about this forever, but I like to keep the episodes short. So I don't want to dive too deeply, but I think it's really cool to think about how this physical aspect.
Mm.
Yeah, that we don't feel a block. And I think, of course, with the work that you do, it's maybe highlighted more because, you work with bodies, and help release blocks. And
Yeah.
so I see it really related in the work that you do. And I'm just thinking about how I actually have an appointment later to go and see a physio slash, well, lots of
Excellent.
different things, and how freeing, and how I'm like, wow, maybe my creativity, like maybe I'll be so energized after, and I'll have this flood of creativity just purely based on having my body less tense, or that kind of thing. So, I like it. Does speaking more languages make you more creative?
I think definitely yes, because well, you speak different languages, you also have wider perspectives at your disposal, right?
Mm.
If I'd only read Finnish media, papers in Finnish, research in Finnish, everything in Finnish, I would be very isolated, right? So knowing more languages, speaking more languages, of course, makes you more creative. I think brain researchers would have something very interesting to say about this topic, because uh, maybe some parts of your brain get activated differently when you have to use another language. Actually, I kind of feel that my brain is somehow differently activated now that I struggle with my English.
That makes me want to ask you spontaneously if you feel like you are yourself right now speaking English with me.
I was about to, like, I started to actually feeling it. I feel quite relaxed, or I start to feel more relaxed.
Yeah.
Whether that means if I'm more me, but I can yeah feel a little bit of difference compared to 15 minutes ago when we started.
Okay. Out of the three languages that you speak, which would you say is more creative?
I think Spanish for me links to creative me,
Mm.
or yeah, somehow I see the Spanish version of me as a more creative person. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Okay.
interesting. It's curious.
I'm so surprised in a sense that because I don't know Finnish and I don't know what the language has to offer. You know, it's so otherworldly that I feel like it's so mystical that maybe there's some huge, like, creative matter almost that exists that I don't know, and so I'm curious, like, and but why not Finnish? Like, why? Yeah, you don't have to answer the question, but you know, it's
Spanish is so fluido, like
yeah.
it's how it sounds. It's so different to Finnish that maybe the flow of the language, maybe it's again a question of identification. Like I want to be fluid and block free, whereas Finnish is very like different sound in
Yeah,
the language.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
one point. In Spanish, I can only see the endings of the words and I can start to play with them. So, for example, I tried sometimes to do a little bit of poetry in Spanish, just because I've studied the grammar and I know, for example, some endings of the words, so I can just play with it.
yeah, definitely. Um, so the last question is in relation to being a business owner or starting a project and having that project developed in a first language, which is not English. And then thinking about what would motivate somebody to transform that business from their first language into English.
To transform, like all the material and things like that. Yeah, I think it's just simply the fact that to gain more clients would be so much easier in English. You gain more audience.
Yeah. And then in your case, do you think that something so traditional, something so based in the folkloric traditions of Finland would lose its authenticity by transforming, for example, the work that you do into English?
I think definitely not, because we need awareness and knowledge about holistic methods of taking care of oneself. And here, English is um, is the best way to get your message through. I don't see it as either or. So I see it as an additive value of using English in communication to raise more awareness internationally.
One thing that Ida always says is that we, the Finnish people, are people of the forests. And I think that's a really beautiful aspect. I don't know if many people listening know much about Finland. Everybody refers to the Nordic countries, but then we have these sort of little sidestep, which is Finland, which sometimes doesn't enter into this sort of generic Nordic North that we think of, Vikings and these sort of images. So, do you want to describe the work that you do?
Yeah, so the Finnish people haven't had access to doctors back in the days, back in the 1800s, let's say. And we have a old tradition, history with healing with our hands and massage and sauna. The culture with sauna is a culture of healing as well, because people were working a lot in the nature, being one with the nature. So we try to heal ourselves with the heat and all these kind of techniques. So the work that I do is based on a technique that can be described as gentle mobilization technique. So we are not really massaging people, but we go through the body gently from the tips of the toes to the top of the head. And yeah, that's what I do.
And what's the name of this technique?
I've translated it as a Finnish mobilization treatment.
Okay, and what would it be called in Finnish?
It's called kalevalainen jäsenkorjaus. And the name has the word Kalevala in it. And Kalevala is Finnish book of mythologies collected by Elias Lönnrot, who was a Finnish doctor back in the 1800s. And he went through different towns, mostly by walk or skiing, and collected poetry, knowledge, or oral stories, and collected them in a form of a book.
Wow.
The founder, let's say, who brought it out of his family to this association that provides the education, he wanted to honor Kalevala, and this is why he wanted the name to include Kalevala, because in one part of Kalevala they talk about putting the bones back to their places.
Okay.
So this is kind of the history of it.
That's so cool. I love it. Well, I think that gives us a lot to think about. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, it's been so wonderful having you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I'm Janelle, and you've been listening to The Moment It Clicked. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Remember, if this episode inspired you, please subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. You can catch the latest episodes, bonus content, and apply to become a guest on the show at www.english-creative.com/podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and let your creativity shine in every language.